There's a tendency in many of us when we get feedback about ourselves, something that, that needs to improve. Maybe somebody's bringing up something that we failed at or wasn't quite so successful. And even in the midst of saying, 5 or 10 wonderful things, what do we remember? That one negative thing, don't we? Maybe not all of us, but sometimes I have a tendency to do that, to remember that negative thing in the midst of all of the positive. I bring this up because we can easily see this challenge of Jesus to Peter as something negative. Oh, you of little faith. Oh, you of little faith. We can see that as a negative and remember this more than all of the faith that Peter is displaying in this episode. In fact, all of the faith that Peter had displayed throughout his life. I think it's good to see this episode, this encounter of Peter and Jesus, and all of the disciples, rather in that journey of faith that Peter had been taking. There's a lot of similarities in the story of the call that connect here with the call of Peter. Where was Jesus when Peter called him? In his boat. He was fishing with his family. He was looking forward to that day as any other day. He knew where his life would take him. Then this teacher comes along, Jesus of Nazareth, who says to him, Peter, come, I want to make you a fisher of men. So Peter immediately got out of the boat. We know the story. In answering yes to Jesus when Jesus said, come, his life was changed forever. His life was changed in a way that he could not ever imagine. It was way beyond what he could even dream about. And so in this story of faith, here is Peter following Jesus, listening to his teaching, growing in his faith, wondering who this Jesus is, seeing Jesus work these miracles, healing people, the power of his preaching, talking about God's love and reconciliation, hearing these parables as we have these past few weekends about the reign of God that's breaking into our world. All of these things were stirring even a deeper faith in Peter until he is frightened as those other disciples. See Jesus coming on the water in the midst of the storm. And Peter having that courage to ask, Lord, I will walk in that water just like you, if this is truly you. What was that one word that Jesus had to Peter? Come. Come. A simple word, but yet again that invitation to a deeper faith. The invitation for Peter to get out of the boat, to step out in that water, to do something that he was convinced was utterly impossible. But he did it. He had that faith. He had that trust. If Jesus is saying this to me, if he's saying, come out of this boat, come out of the security that you want to hold on to, this is somebody more than just a great teacher. This is Jesus who's walking on water. And who can walk on water? Well, God. No one else can. He was able to put his trust in Jesus as the Son of God. What a wonderful step of faith. And yes, Peter got afraid. He felt the wind. He realized what he was doing. Peter is human after all. He had yet to grow in that journey of faith. He was not yet ready to give his life to Jesus as he eventually would in Rome. And so he sunk. But then again, in not wanting to feel helpless, not staying in that helplessness, he reached out, Lord, save me. Again, another act of faith, another plea in faith, another response in faith. So lest we be too hard on Peter and say, oh, you of little faith, as Jesus did. And understanding what Jesus was saying was now is the time to continue to grow in that faith. What about in our own lives? Isn't it easy for us to get discouraged when we think our faith is too small? When we're encountering these storms of life, whatever they may be, the doubts, the frustrations, the illnesses that confront us, death itself, our own struggles with sin, our own inability to change the course of the world that's so caught up in hatred and violence and things that go against what we believe to be true. What do? Do we stay huddled in fear? Or do we actually say what Peter did? Lord, if this is you, Lord, if this is you, command me to come out of the boat. Think about those times, the prayers that we have when we're struggling with whatever issue it may be in our life. Lord, grant me more patience. Lord, help me to be more understanding. Lord, help me to come over this anger that I'm holding on to, whatever it may be. We bring that prayer to the Lord, and he just may say to us, come, take a step out in faith. I'm giving you my grace, but I want you to step out into those waters, that place where you may not feel secure, those places where you may have to surrender something. What a wonderful story of faith. And so let us not judge too harshly Peter and see where his faith wasn't big enough in this, because it truly was. He stepped out. But in our own lives, I think we need to look at the story of Elijah as well, because it gives us a pattern. It gives us a way to go forward. It gives us a way to react, or to respond rather, when we're encountering maybe that lack of faith in ourselves. I mean, here Elijah, he had this great success. He took on all the prophets of the pagan queen that was in Israel at the time. A powerful display of God's power. He had this great success, and then very shortly afterwards, he's running for his life. The queen wants to kill him. So where does he go? He goes to Mount Horeb, the place where Moses received that revelation of God, where Moses received the Ten Commandments. He went to that place to listen to God. As he went there to listen, to see where God was going to lead him forward in his next step of faith, it wasn't in all of those places that the world presumed that God would speak. In the mighty wind, God wasn't there. God wasn't speaking in the wind. In the earthquake, God wasn't speaking in the earthquake or in the power of the fire, but in the stillness of a whisper. That's how we need to go forward in our lives, to listen to that voice of God that's calling us, as he calls Peter, come, take a step out in faith. Come, put your trust in me. Come, I am the Son of God. I have the power over all things. Will you trust me? So this week, let us take that step of faith. Whatever those troubled waters in our lives may be, taking that step in faith and trust as Peter did. Wherever we may be on our journey of faith, Christ is calling us to take that next step. Let us do so as Peter did. Not looking down on ourselves, not saying this is well and staying there, but saying all things, as Mary, all things are possible with God.